It's 2:05. We're going to call the public permit hearing to order. Have all board members present except for Stephen Cast. Item number 1, permit hearing on the following drilling operating application. 1, drilling operating permit for the Texas A&M University System. Well number 9, BVDO0421, located at the intersection of Goodson Bend Road and State Highway 47 in Brazos County. Total maximum annual production from the well will be 1,934.8 acre feet per year at a maximum rate of 2,800 gallons per minute for public water supply use. The well will produce from the Simsboro aquifer.
So we did receive comments. We received 12, and each of y'all will have a packet of the 12 contested case requests, hearing requests. I won't attempt to name all of them, but they all were received in a timely manner. They came in on Friday of last week ahead of our 5-day lead time in order to have a contested case. So I guess at this point, besides that, and if you have any questions on that, we can go through those, but it would be if there's public comment, if anybody's signed up.
So I have one request from Paulina Williams.
Could you might come in over here
one side or the other of the
please,
table
and just tell us who you are.
Yep.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Paulina Williams with outside counsel for UW Brazos Valley Farm LLC, which owns roughly 9,000 acres of farmland here in Robertson County in the district. And that land is used to produce staple crops like soybeans, corn, and cotton. And the farm relies on groundwater from both the alluvium and the Simsboro, and also has Simsboro wells that, as you are aware, are part of a source for a critically needed regional water supply project. So holding both production from the Simsboro aquifer. And we simply ask that you refer the matter to hearing in accordance with your rules under Section 14. I know other landowners with Simsboro wells have made similar requests, and so we thank you for your consideration of this in accordance with Section 14 of your rules. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak on this item? Tell us about the permit.
Certainly.
See if you can make it. Give me just 1 second. So it is an administrative complete application. It was turned in to us in June. We went through the process of just like any other drilling operating permit. There was a need because of the magnitude of pumping that it, okay, that's good, that it had a hydrogeologic report. That was done by AGS. So also our hydrologist, A&M decided that it would be a good thing for them to do it, and that we were going to have to be the ones, our AGS going to have to do the report, the review of it anyway, and our rules allow for that to happen. So we did do that. This is the footprint of the well that she has up right now. It is on the Rellis campus, and you can see that it fits onto and within the property that they have. The footprint there is a contiguous acres of 414.91 acres. Going to the next slide. And they went too far. This is our rules as we adopt them in September of last year. We did away with any overlapping of footprints. So the particular well that's in blue, that is well number 8. It's a historic use well, so there was never it didn't have to have any type of a footprint. But in order to keep spacing properly done, we create what would be that footprint and then place the new well to make sure that those two footprints don't overlap. So this is designates that it is properly, the location of the well and the radius from the well do not overlap into their existing well footprint. And again, it was administratively complete. We've had the report up online for probably 30 days for the public to review, for you guys to review. If somebody had any questions on it, James could likely be able to answer any of the questions from the hydrogeologic review. And I'll leave it there, with especially since we have the contested case hearing requests.
Okay.
Unless somebody else has some questions.
Any questions from the board? You said the spacing and all conforms to the new rules we wish to have adopted in September?
That is correct.
Okay.
Everything conforms to the rules that we passed September 14th of 2023.
At all well is historic use. What criteria do you use to determine what the footprint of that well is?
We went in and said, what is the total amount of production on that well? So whatever that was, then we drew the footprint based on the new rule and what that footprint, it would be like if they came and said, we need a well right there also. That's how that footprint was created.
That production from that whole well, where'd that number come from? Is that the actual production or is that?
That's a permitted amount that they
Permitted amount,
got
okay.
back in 2004, 5, 6. They
So
came-
based on the historic use permit
That's
amount, you
correct.
created
Based on the
that.
historic use permit application. That's correct.
Any other questions? We will adjourn the permit hearing. Going to the regular board meeting. Call the meeting to order. First item of business is pledge of allegiance. If you please stand. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a quorum present. All board members here except for Stephen Cass. Move into public comment on non-agenda items. Do we have anybody that wishes to speak on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move to public comment on agenda items. We have several speakers here. First is Jim Matthews on items 10 and 11.
You want to take those up now or at the time of the?
You want to do them now or wait till the item
Wherever
comes
you
up?
want, it doesn't, how we, y'all want to do it.
You can either do it now or wait.
I'd prefer to do it on the agenda.
All right. Paulina Williams, now or later?
I'll go now.
All right.
Did you need me to go over there? Okay.
I will say either way, let's do it, if they're so, to do them before we go into executive, so we have the benefit of comments that are relative to 10, 11 before we go into executive.
That's fine.
If you want to go first, then.
Sure.
I mean, say we can do it now, or we can do it at right before 9, so between 8 and 9.
My name is Jim Matthews. I'm here today on behalf of the cities of Bryan, cities of College Station, in Brazos County. We previously filed comments on the proposed rule revisions, and we specifically focused on the section dealing with the ratification of permits. First of all, as I understand it, your council has brought this problem to you, that you had permits that were acted on when the board didn't have a quorum, or board members voted who were not at the time eligible to vote. I want to be clear that what we're giving you is a suggestion, so probably many ways that you could approach this problem. But what I've just handed out is our markup as we submitted in the comments to the board. I think the primary difference is our new subsection D, which would say that the manager can basically act on these applications if they meet all of these conditions. And the condition that we added is that the permit or the amendment was considered and unanimously approved by the board at a properly noticed meeting. You have at least one permit that would not have been approved but for the presence of board members who were not authorized to vote, who voted in favor of the permit. And we don't think that one ought to be simply left to the general manager to act upon. I note that in light of your subsection C and the recent request for contested case hearings on that and other applications associated with that, our request change probably is not mandatory at this point in time to be able to avoid having the manager take that up. But we offered it as a suggestion, and I just wanted to call it to your attention. The other thing that we filed comments about was the Upwell transport permit that's currently pending, it plus the other individual landowners applications that are pending. It was our view, with all respect to the general manager, that those applications were not administratively complete. Your statute gives you 3 factors to consider in doing a transport application. One of those factors is whether or not the applicant has provided you information necessary to evaluate the impact of their proposed production on groundwater within the district. The application did speak to that with regard to Robertson County, but it was totally silent on the impact of groundwater resources in Brazos County. We think since that's a factor that you have to consider in granting the application, you need to have that information available to you. Secondly, you're supposed to consider whether the application is consistent with the regional water plan. There was nothing in the application that really spoke to the consistency with the regional plan. In fact, what the application speaks to is a potential sale of water to Georgetown. And Georgetown is specifically addressed in the regional water plan. And it has what are called recommended water management strategies, not one of which involves groundwater from Robertson County. So it seems to me that the plan to export water to Georgetown, if that is what this is about, is not consistent with the regional water plan. I would also point out that there's really an absence in the application of identifying a user for the permit. And one of the factors that you have to look at is what are the user's alternative sources of water. There's speculation it's going to be via a contract with Georgetown, but there's no contract with Georgetown. In fact, it says that Georgetown is negotiating with a party, EPCOR, which is not even an applicant on this permit. And so you really have an application for a user that hasn't identified that he has a plan to export the water. So for all those reasons, we think that you need more information in the application before the board can take it up as an administratively complete application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm glad to answer any questions.
Next, we have Ms. Paulina Williams.
Okay. Here I am speaking on behalf of UW Brazos Valley Farm, but also really for the multiple landowners who have thousands of acres of land in Robertson County who are participating in our regional supply project that is critically needed. And last month, the district considered but did not adopt the rulemaking package that via ratification would affirm the validity of prior issued permits and rules, as was discussed. It's never too late to do the right thing. And the proposed rulemaking is an important action for this board to put to bed today. At the August meeting, the district made it clear by ratifying other board actions, including a production permit amendment, that it can level set and move forward with a clean slate. Landowner permittees are entitled to the same clarity and to equal treatment. The district staff recommended the proposed rulemaking to recognize the validity of the board's past permitting actions. And private parties have relied on those actions, as did the district and its employees. Investments have been made in good faith reliance on those board decisions. The board's August ratifications recognize this. So the board can live up to its promise to engage in sound governance and to follow the law, providing fair and impartial treatment to landowners. We've provided a detailed explanation in writing of the law and why, even with the permits being valid as a matter of law, this ratification is an important action today. And that is in part because of other people's efforts to throw clouds on what are valid final permits issued by this board. So in short, there is no basis in law or logic, and no commenter on this rulemaking package has provided any, for this district or anyone else to question or to disparage the over 80 permits and the property rights of over a dozen permittees who complied with the district's rules and have moved forward in significant and appropriate reliance on the district's actions in issuing final permits throughout 2023 and 2024. The district itself has also moved forward in reliance on those permits. So today is the time to adopt the district proposal for ratification rule package, respecting the rights of all landowners in the district. This will return everyone to the status quo that existed and should exist. So further delay would only lead to more disruption and uncertainty. And this is the time to stop allowing for additional clouds to be thrown where it is unwarranted and unfair to people who have complied with and relied on your fair governance. As to the transport permit, so that's item 10, the rulemaking. As to item 11, with respect to the transport permits, responding to Mr. Matthews' comments, we have already responded in writing to all of those allegations regarding the completeness of the application. I believe you have that and can refer to it, so I'm not going to reiterate it here, but we're happy to answer those questions. Your staff did the right thing. They did a good job. And those matters have been protested. We recognize in that instance, that was a timely protest. To the extent Mr. Matthews and his clients wish to inform the record in the course of the hearing, that will be a forum for them to do so. But it does not change the fact that this district properly found those applications to be administratively complete and moved forward with that. So we ask you to continue to move forward with the processing of that. If the interlocal agreement is available and you are able to docket at SOA as requested in June, the landowners who are involved in this project, all 7 of them, would very much appreciate that transparency and that straightforward and impartial application of this district's rules. So I will stop there and thank you. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Nick Lutz.
Hello, my name is Nick Lutz. I'm speaking on behalf of RH2O LLC, my family's company. I appeared before this board several times, and I am here again today for 2 reasons. First is that ratification issue. We heard last month that this issue affects production permits that the board approved over a year ago. We applied for those permits in August of 2023. We hired a lawyer, hydrologist, followed the rules, paid our fees, The board approved our application and we received final signed document permits. We've been relying on those final permits ever since in our agreements and how we manage our family's resources. It's my understanding that the board can fix this issue with the final permits, but has not. I don't see why it wouldn't. It accepted our payments and has continued processing the related permits. I'm asking the board today to do what it should do, fix a problem. Plain and simple, sounds like to me. The second reason I'm here is my pending transport permit application, which was, I thought was moved to move here quickly after the June board meeting. That was 3 months ago. I'm not sure why it has been happening taken during that time, but I asked the board to do whatever next steps are necessary to move this application along. It's the same ask that I made last time I was here. Follow the rules, treat me fairly, respect our rights as landowners and as a community member and as a member of your district. We would appreciate it if you could make this happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next, I have Eddie McCarthy.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Eddie McCarthy. I'm an attorney from Austin. We represent several landowners who have had their permits implicated in this issue, some of which are involved in the Upwell project, some of which aren't. I wanted to first adopt and agree with everything you heard from Ms. Paulina Williams today, as well as what was in her letter that you all received yesterday. I think that all of those legal arguments are correct, very sound, and carry a lot of weight here. What I would like to add, however, is a response to a letter that you received from Texas A&M's counsel yesterday, in that the university has now shifted to demanding action from you all in trying to continue to block these production permits. Regardless of the quorum issue, which is going to be an ongoing discussion, you should ignore that request for one simple reason. As you heard Mr. Day earlier today in the permit hearing, there is a 5-day deadline prior to the hearing in which you must, in writing, make your contested case request. That specifically is Rule 14.3.5A of you all's rules. Whether or not there was a quorum at those meetings, it doesn't change the fact that for a contested case hearing request to have been made properly, it had to happen 5 days prior. Counsel for A&M, Mr. Sherman, in his letter yesterday referenced a September 5th letter. In that September 5th letter, on the very first page, footnote 4 tells you exactly when all of those hearing dates were. January 13, 2022, April 14, 22, October 20th, 22, February 9th, 2023, March 9th, 23, September 14th, 2023. The deadline is very clearly 5 days prior to that, A&M needed to show up. They didn't. At no point in any of those permit hearings did you hear a single word from the university. The requests today are frankly untimely and should be dismissed as such. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next, I have Daisy Wilbert.
You already said everything.
You gonna pass?
Yes.
All right. Next, I have Lynn Sherman.
Thank you. I'm Lynn Sherman, and I'm here to represent the Texas A&M system. And I'd like to start off by acknowledging the fact that I made a mistake. Human error. Last sentence of the letter that we sent out yesterday, in the second line, I inserted the word void, and I meant the word valid. And I circulated a new copy of that letter for everybody to have the benefit of it. Everything else is the same except for I corrected the mistake that was made, placed the word void with the word valid. Mistakes happen. They're no. Some are fixable. Some aren't. A meeting without a quorum, treated by the law as having never existed. That legal premise cannot be fixed. Might be an unfortunate result. It might not have been intended. The law does not recognize it as ever happening. This is the first meeting of the board with the upwell permits, as well as their landowner permits, save and except the transport permit identified in item 11, which we've already put on the agenda for today. But Texas A&M System timely filed a request for contested case hearing on it. We filed another one here just to preserve our right, continuing right, to make sure that that transport permit, or those transport permits do in fact go to SOA. But relative to the other upwell permits that could be ratified through the adoption of the rules in item number 10, for all the production permits and the other transport permit that is a co-applicant, that was co-applied for by Upwell and the landowners. Those all were considered in meetings that did not have a quorum. So today's the first opportunity for the board with an appropriately seated quorum to make that decision. As a result, the Texas A&M Systems request, it was more than 5 days ago, last week, is timely. And all we ask is that the board comply with section 36.114, I'm sorry, about 36.416 of the Texas Water Code, and follow the mandatory requirement to send those for contested case hearing before the State Office of Administrative Hearings. Texas Water Code 36.114B precludes applications that have been contested from being ratified in the way that is contemplated by the rules that y'all are going to consider today in item number 10. Therefore, we renew our request that all of those permits that are itemized in our letter that you now have before you, corrected to address my mistake, and then all those be sent to State Office of Administrative Hearings for a hearing, contested case hearing by the parties. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on agenda items? Seeing none, move to item number 1, discussion and possible action on the minutes of the August 8th, 2024 rules hearing, public permit hearing, and regular board meeting.
And so you have the minutes in front of you. We have had these up online for public viewing since Friday of last week. For those that are in the audience, you can always go to our website. We have all the documents that any of the board members have that, other than executive session type material, are available to be viewed at least by 3 days ahead of the meeting, but in this case, it was since last Friday. If anybody has any questions on the minutes that I've had up for review, certainly take them now. And if not, I'd ask that you approve the minutes as presented.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of the August 8th public permit and regular board meeting hearing.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2, financial report for August 2024.
Start off with the deposits for the month, $42,914.13. We have two large accounts that didn't make it in by deadline, so it's a little lower than it normally is, but that will be taken up in next month or this month. Moving on to the balance sheet, you see that our total in CDs is at 939,695.87. Our total current assets at almost 1.3 million, but total assets and go ahead and go on to the next one. Is total assets at 1.688 million. And you can see also that total liabilities and equity, with most, again, always the retained earnings is the lion's share of equity. And you can see that balances out. Then moving on to the budget expenditures. You see that same total income, for the month, then you have our income to date at 500 and, at $695,974 to date. With about 80% of the budget used, which is, as I explained last month, there are some of these categories, such as engineering, hydrology, the ArcGIS, our database, attorney's fees. There's some of these that are blended because some of it are used for our well assistance fund. Some are being used from the just for normal everyday business of the district. Next year, my plans are to separate these out to where we have line items based on well assistance and otherwise, so that it's a little clearer picture. Anybody have any questions on that at all? Not, move on to the next page, which is our collateralization report. And here, collateralization report, our weighted average monthly maturity date is almost 87 days, very current, with a total of percent of portfolio on CDs is just over 71%. Cash is just about 29%. And our collateralized levels at our two banks that would exceed the $250,000. At Prosperity Bank, we're at 135% collateralized. At South Star Bank, we're at 304%. And that gives you the breakdown where you can actually see it. Before you couldn't see it, too small. And then the next page here is our total expenditure for the month at $62,981.39. Nothing, the only thing that you see there, you see Dunlap Marketing at $48.58, and that was for the 2,600 letters that went out for the A&M application, the 5-mile radius from the well, all landowners, all property owners to be notified. We contracted with Dunlap. Any of the expenses associated with that mailing were billed, invoiced to A&M, just as we've done before. And then the Well Assistance Fund, you have 3 expenditures from there. One is for fuel, the very first one, John, staff member, field staff, and then you had another Mansfield fuel. Do you have any questions on any of the financials? If not, I'd ask that you approve the financial report as presented.
Any questions from the board? If not, entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, presentation of the 2023 district financial audit by Russell Armagos, CPA from Milberger, Nesbitt, and Osk LLP.
If it's all right, we're going to bump this to October. Didn't know until after posting that we will need to do couple of amendments to the 2023 budget, which needs to be done prior to the presentation of the audit. He has it done, but we just didn't have it on the agenda to be able to make the amendments to the budget. So we can skip 4 and 5 and
3, 4, and 5.
just 4 and 5.
We're on 3.
3, what was it, 3? I'm sorry. 3, yes, 3. 4. And no, we need to do 5.
Okay.
We need to do 5.
Okay. Item number 5, discussion and possible action to amend the 2024 district operating budget.
Right, so we have had several things throughout 2024 that have begun to exceed our adopted budget, and we need to make some adjustments. We have purchased the H&R Block building, which was not on our capital expenditures. We have recently purchased the property here right behind this wall here, the 213 South Magnolia. That was not on our capital budget. We've also done the demolition of the building that was here. I think we've been applauded by the city of Hearn, by the way, for sure. And that was not on our capital budget. So we need to add those in and get them on the budget sooner rather than later. We also, I'll move on here, our hydrogeologic services have exceeded what we had anticipated back in November of last year. We certainly didn't know we would be getting off into some of the needs that we had. They were unforeseen. Also in legal services, I don't think anybody foresaw. Again, they have a really good crystal ball on the all the SOA matters that we're having to deal with and that type of thing. And we also, on our part-time employee, I'm using Taylor, who was here all summer long, but I have her doing working on our database and getting things completely updated. We got a new database put in place. There's a lot of data that needs to be, we have blanks to fill. So she's been doing that. Anyway, I would suggest my recommendations on our hydrogeologic services, we increase that line item by 55,000. It's currently at 120,000. I'm moving that up to 175,000. On legal services, to increase our total legal services by an additional 75,000. We're currently at 78.5, which is Monique's. And it's also, we had a small amount in there for Lloyd Gosselink, which now that has become since he is my attorney and all the SOA matters and the negotiations and things that are going on, we need to put some money in for that. So I'll move it from 78.5 to 153.5. The part-time employees, you just bump it up $6,000 from 7,000 now to 13. And then you see the 3 under the district capital budget, which are the H&R Block building, the property here on South Magnolia adjacent to us, and then the contracted demolition that we've already done, Albo LLC. This building was in, well, there really wasn't a building there, it was a pile of rubble. But the walls were up and those walls could have fallen at any point in time. So y'all know, we had talked about that there was gonna have to be demolition done. As soon as we got that building purchased, I'd already talked to 4 or 5 different companies about doing this. Became clear Albo was the one to do the deal. They moved in and in 5 days it was gone. So we need to, and we do have a item on the agenda after this to ratify the invoice and get them paid. Anyway, that's my recommendations, and I'm more than happy to take any questions or suggestions otherwise.
Any questions or comments from the board? If not, entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
The motion to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6. Presentation by Mark Nichols updating the board on progress related to the Brazos River Alluvium Aquifer Groundwater Surface Water Interaction Study sponsored by the Brazos Valley Groundwater Conservation District and being conducted by Baylor University.
Y'all seen Mark before? He continues to work hard out in the bottom. On a good bit this summer. Joe came with him. Dr. Joe came with him, I guess, to supervise him here today. He sure didn't do a whole lot of that this summer. Did he? No, he let you out on his own. Okay, that's a good thing. Anyway, I'm gonna turn it over to Mark.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for the time. I'll be presenting my work as my master's thesis, and so it's a progress report. Get into the overview. I'll review kind of the purpose of the study, as well as some intro information, and then talk about updates, review some initial data that we've collected, review the timeline, and talk about what I'm going to continue to do. This is motivated from y'all wanting to protect your resources, especially for irrigation use in the Brazos River Alluvium Aquifer. And the Brazos River Alluvium Aquifer, as well as the Brazos River, are important agricultural water supplies, and they do interact, but that interaction is complex, and there's more data that needs to be collected, and studies that need to be done like this one in order to understand that system well. Because of how heterogeneous, how mixed it is, how different it is from place to place, and the compartmentalization. And so with those thoughts, our goal is to better define these interactions, specifically with the impacts of high and low water in the Brazos River on that interaction, looking at the difference in chemistry between the river and the alluvium as a diagnostic for that, as well as for informational purposes, and then continuing to look at the influence of seasonality and pumping and irrigation on that impact. The study site is Brazos, Robertson, Burleson, and Milam counties, so the middle segment of the Brazos River Alluvium Aquifer. We have 3 local study sites, one in Calvert, Texas, that we were coordinating with Aqua Strategies to get some data on the river, one outside of Hearn, off FM 485, and there's a USGS stream gauge there that monitors the Brazos River, and finally, a local study site in Bryan. Keeping that map, I'll walk you back to the map in a second. We've installed data loggers at each of these sites. We've installed one temperature level and conductivity logger and one temperature and level logger that looks at the groundwater level at a much higher rate than I can go out and collect it myself. So it collects it at 10-minute increments constantly, so that we can look at that interaction a lot more clear time scale. That's what I was trying to say. So we attach those to the wells at each of the sites. So looking at each of the sites of where they are, first in Calvert, Texas, we have that temperature level and conductivity data logger closest to the river at each of these stations, and then the one that doesn't have conductivity a little bit further away. So we're looking at what happens in the river, what happens in each of those 2 wells. So that's the site in Calvert. Similarly, in Hearn, we have those 2 data loggers set up, with the TLC data logger closer to the river. And then finally in Bryan, which is what I'm going to present data on today, because we got it set up a little bit sooner. We have the temperature level conductivity closest to the river. It's about 700 feet away. And then the level temperature logger about 2,000 feet away. And so looking at the data from this is throughout time on the x-axis, and then the elevation of the water on the y-axis of the river in blue with the connected lines. The closest well that was the temperature level and conductivity in green, and then finally the level and temperature that was further away in red. Initial impressions are that the river starts high and goes down. We got a really wet spring with high water in the river, and we'll talk about the implications of that. We see the green well kind of doing a similar pattern with variation throughout the time scale that I'm showing here, and then the red well steadily increasing with much less variation in the data. So breaking this down into stages, and I'll discuss those stages. There we go. and add one more element onto a little bit of a busy slide, which is a cross section with on the x-axis distance away from the river. So starting on the left with the river at 0, and then like I said, 700 feet for the first well and 2,000 feet for the last well. Looking in stage A, it's characterized by high river level with what we call a partially reversed gradient. And so what that means essentially is that the water is suggested to be coming from the river into the alluvium to the closest section. But then the well, the red well that's a little bit further in, is higher than the middle well. And so this is kind of, the gradient is suggesting flow towards the middle. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail at the end, but I want to walk through these stages first. In stage B, we see the green well, where the receiver is, pop up above the red well. So we call it a fully reversed gradient. This would suggest flow from the river all the way into the alluvium, although that's not likely where the water is going, which I'll talk about again a little bit later. In section C, it's essentially the same with the partial reversal as A, with the river starting to come down finally. And then at the end, characterized by it coming below the red well. Stage D, we have the river drop below the red well. So we're back to this flip, but it's still the gradient suggesting flow to the middle well. We do have what's a pumping event in the middle that was conducted on either that well or the well that's 60 yards away from it. And so it looks a little bit less steep and characteristic for the hydrogeologists in the room. These are daily averages, and so it's smoothed out a little bit. They are reflective of the variation on those 10-minute intervals, but it just smooths out a little bit better. So we interpreted that as a pumping event. Essentially, you can just cut it out and connect the dots before and after it happened to look at the general trend. In stage E, the river and the middle well are pretty much the same level throughout it. It's just kind of splitting hairs there. They're pretty much the same, with the red well significantly higher, but continuing to rise. And then lastly, in stage F, we get to, and there's an error on this slide because of versions. It's a low river level and the gradient is fully normal. So with suggesting flow from the aquifer into the river. And so thinking about what this means, I said that it's not likely that the water is traveling from the river all the way into the aquifer. We're seeing that response in the river, but if you can think of this standard gradient of the water discharging from the aquifer into the river, if you put a bunch of water in the river, it acts as a dam, and so it starts building up. And so you're going to see the response back into the aquifer a little bit. And we think we're seeing that response in that green well, but it's not necessarily river water that's getting in there. And so that's where further chemistry would help us if the isotopic ratio might be different, or some other chemical things that we're still considering and looking at the data of. But our initial impressions are that conceptually, and then also it's hard to tell on this graph, but the peak in the river occurs about a day before the peak in the well. So that would further the conclusion that the high river level is causing the response further back into the aquifer. To review the timeline, I'm going to continue working on this through the fall. Initial report will be, I believe, in December, and then I'll finish up editing that and submitting my thesis in the spring. I'll continue to do river sampling and aquifer sampling, as well as now that the river's come down, we're going to do some bank flow measurements to look at water coming out of the aquifer into the river, into the bank. And I'll be presenting later this month at the National Geologic Society of America conference. Thank my collaborators at Baylor, as well as Alan, Aqua Strategies, and the landowners. And with that, references, I'll take any questions.
So are you saying for a guy that doesn't know anything, that river comes up, you got the water gradient moving toward the river, and as the water is getting to the river and trying to discharge, it's not able to discharge, so it starts piling up? Is that a good way to look at that, Joe? Mark?
Yeah.
And then when we have a lowering event in the river, so it's going down over time, we're going to see that, oh, now it's able to discharge again. So we're going to see that lowering and moving back to a normal level.
I'd say that's a fair characterization.
Which is what you've seen before.
Yeah. And it's worth saying that the significance of this is that it's on the scale of of 10-minute and daily increments, not quarterly measurements. So we see these suggestions in data previously, but looking at it at a much finer timescale strengthens that understanding.
Any questions from the board?
Welcome any input from anybody, even James, you can give us some ideas too, as long as you don't charge me. Okay.
We'll talk after, Joe.
Hearing none, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mark.
Item number 7, discussion and possible action to ratify payment to Albo LLC for the contracted demolition of the building located at 213 South Magnolia Street, Hearn, Texas.
So, the committee visited with Mark and with Jeff and with Jason. Oh, I just didn't see you.
I'll remember that.
About moving in as soon as we did get this ball on the 27th and get the building down. We had done the before work to know who it was that we wanted. They did move in. Our bylaws allow for us to ratify after the fact the work that's been done. The email that I got placed it at an estimated 65.5. It had been originally 68. We put it at 65.5. I've had Cynthia to call him today to hopefully to get that invoice worked up. I just need the contractual agreement that we executed with Albo. And it's going to be in and around 65.5. I don't know the exact number for the demolition of the building at 213 South Magnolia Street. We need to get that ratified. It's my recommendation that you do so.
Any questions from the board? If not, entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, discussion and possible action on the Personnel Committee recommendation for contracted services for FY 2025.
So the Personnel Committee, led by John Elliott, Chair, and Stephen and Chris. Stephen was not available to be there on the 29th. I visited with him before we met and got some of his thoughts. The agenda was to review the 2024 performance of the district contractors, to determine if there were needs for requests for qualifications for any of the contracted positions for 2025. Requests for qualifications are, we want to look around and see if there's anybody else we'd like to have, and ask them to send in this a request for qualifications that yes, we are qualified. It's a whole process that they go through. The third thing was to formulate 2025 contract recommendations to the board. And then that would be ultimately presented to the Budget Finance Committee for budgeting purposes. They did my performance appraisal, and they will be the ones to determine the salary treatment. What we are doing, what I will present now, is that there are 2 of the contractors that at this point we're required to show that they have a professional liability insurance. One is for legal, the other is for engineering and hydrology. Both have, so I've reached out to all of our current contractors. The committee agreed that everyone at my recommendation that all of our contractors had done an outstanding job. Legal, hydrogeologic, our database half, and Jeff Skelton on our IT. They've done just an outstanding job, and I recommended that we contract them back in 2025 and reach out to them for their proposed contract and budget for the 2025 year. Milberger, Nesbitt, and Osk, our audit services, this will be the last time we'll have them. Russell is retiring in December, and they do not intend to fill that position in 2025. The firm doesn't. So I have initiated an RFQ and have sent that out in early September. We've gotten one response back so far. We've got another one coming. It's going to be higher than it's been. So we'll see. But we are getting some responses to it. So I'm pleased with that. With that said, anytime you want to, John or Chris, you're just more than welcome to jump in here, okay? After I sent out a request for proposals, this is what we got back on our engineering hydrologist. That'd be James, AGS. Expected we're going to be about 130,000 would be what we would put in as our budgeted amount. Monique has not changed at all from this year. Last year we budgeted 68.5. The legal services for Lloyd Gosling, I put it in at $75,000, and that's an unknown. That's all I can tell you. That's an unknown at this point. Okay. Our half associates on our database, they've sent in an estimated. I've visited with them at length about what we may and may not be needing. We just putting that in at 10,000. Still waiting on auditing services, so we likely won't have anything to present to you until we start looking at the budget in October, and we'll be presenting that to the budget committee probably maybe as late as this month, at the end of the month. And then Jeff Skelton's has not changed, and we're looking at $7,000 there. So I think it's the recommendation of the committee and of the general manager to execute contracts with each of these that we can. Go ahead and get them online for our 2025 calendar year, and then work within our budget to get that properly budgeted. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Happy to answer.
I guess I'd like to say that the logic behind the existing contractors is you've got contractors that have been working here and have history here. And the value that you see on that screen, there's more value in their past history and knowledge of everything that we do, more than what you see on that screen. And to get somebody else in there, you basically have to retrain them. There's a lot of value in that.
I have one question.
Yeah.
On the legal services contract for Lloyd Gosling, is their scope going to be limited to helping you in the contested
At
case?
this point,
So they won't be doing general district business?
they will not be. That's solely for any litigation services, basically. That's our agreement with them now. It's a long-standing agreement that has just gone on.
I have a question on the auditing services, the RFQ. How does that work? Did you advertise for that, or do you pick people to send it to, or how
I
does
did.
it work?
What I did, I called around, I asked around.
Real quickly, you have to follow the Professional Services Procurement Act on CPAs, auditors. And so it's a two-step process that you go out for RFQ, request for qualifications first. You pick them based on qualifications, just like engineers fall under that. And then you pick that one, and then you proceed to negotiating.
But how do you identify if?
I reached out to groundwater districts that I knew.
Okay.
And who do y'all use? Give me names. I asked Russell, I said, give me names. Is there anyone that you would suggest? And so that's where I got the names that I got.
So we did
It's
public
been up on the
advertising.
website.
Oh, you did public advertising. on our
Yes,
website.
absolutely.
And I will say, based on representing several other districts across the state, even in more rural areas, y'all are on the cheaper end. It will go up, in my experience, yeah.
But I think you said you advertised, so it's on the website? Request for quotation is on the website.
Right, still up. that's all still open right now. I've also got an RFQ for architectural engineering when they hadn't put that up because we're going to be needing work done over here into the H&R block, that kind of thing. So that's been up for about the same time.
Any other questions from the board? If not, entertain a motion.
Move that we contract listed, but the contractors that are listed up there for fiscal year 2025.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9, executive session. This time the board will go in executive session under Texas Government Code 551071 to receive attorney-client privilege information regarding district rule amendments, including but not limited to amendments to the district rules listed. Texas Government Code 551.071 to receive attorney-client privilege information regarding pending transport permit applications, groundwater, territorial aquifer, and Texas Government Code 551.071 attorney-client privileged information.
It's like, yeah.
2025 export permit fee structure. Coming out of executive session, we'll move on to item number 10. Discussion and possible action following notice of public rules hearing on proposed district rule amendments, including but not limited to amendments to district rules 2.2, 5.2 F and G, 6.1, 6.2, 7.1 C, 8.1, 8.3 H and J, 8.4, 8.5 B, 8.7, 8.8, 8.9, 9.1, 10.3, 10.4 D, 14.2, 14.3, 0.5, 14.4, 14.6, and section 16. Alan?
All right, let's start. Let me see if we can. There it goes. All right, so all of these rules were adopted. Excuse me. Most of these rules were originally adopted on September 14th of 2023. Okay, and there's as Jason just showed you, there's a litany of rules, and I'm hoping that everyone in the room has paid attention to those. And we're going to go over a couple of the rules. One's got a very minor change to it. We'll talk about that in a moment. The other is Rule 8.3 G and J. We will be showing that one. Any of the board members that would like anything other than that, certainly chime in at any moment. Okay. We need the rules. Give just a moment. We have a whole different slideshow for that. So. Okay, I'm going to start with this. All of these rules that we are going to be looking at adopting today are going to be retroactive back to September the 14th of 2023, which was the original date of most of these rules being adopted. Okay. I'm going to go down here to slide. I'll get there. All right, 8.3 J. You see what it was, the lines that are marked out is what it used to be. And I'll read through 8.3 as we are proposing to, the staff is proposing to have it adopted. Pursuant to section 36.14B of the Texas Water Code, the district by rule shall determine whether a hearing or on a permit or permit amendment application is required. That's what is currently in the rule. We are asking to change that to pursuant to 36.114B and C of the Texas Water Code. The district by rule shall determine whether a hearing or a permit or permit amendment application is required and whether the authority to act on the application is delegated to the general manager.
So that's the change. All in blue has been posted since mid to late July on the district's website. The change in red was in response to a comment received on the rules. And it's just further, it's cut and paste from the actual statute, clarifying the authority of which for that rule.
Okay. Reading further, the general manager is therefore authorized to grant and issue the following administrative complete permit applications and permit amendment applications without further notice, public hearing, nor action by the board. And the board hereby ratifies the general manager's prior issues of: number one, permits for water production for 150 acre feet per year or less if the application meets the requirements of the district's rules. And two, permits or permit amendments that A, the district deemed that the permit or permit amendment applications were administratively complete under the district's rules. B, the district provided notice or notices to the public of the permit or permit amendment applications under Rule 14.1 and 14.2 during the time period from January the 1st of 2021 to July the 1st of 2024. And C, the district did not receive any written notices of intent to contest the permit or permit amendment applications under Rule 14.3.5A. General manager shall provide reports of the granted permits / permit amendments to the board. That is the wording that is, yes.
One question. So under 2, in order for you to issue a permit, all 3 of those tenants would need to apply.
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, and we've got one more deal with. It's not already, it's a simple wording change
Requested by John Seifert.
by John Seifert, our still working with us as with James in hydrology. And it is, one moment, right here, under Section 9, fees and deposits, and under G, proposing, you see, it says the above listed fees may be based on, and one, it used to say the size, we want to change the word size to diameter of the, it used to say column pipe, we want to say the casing used, it used to say by, in constructing the well. That's the only change. It's just to clean it up, make it more clear to everyone exactly what we're talking about how you could use that to base your fee. The board got any questions on that at all? Everything, again, I want to remind the board that we're going to, as you adopt these, that we would be adopting all the way back retroactive to September the 14th of 2023. All right. Anybody have any other questions on any of the other ones? We have them all teed up that we could go through every one if we'd like to. Okay, no questions?
Entertain a motion from the board.
Yes, sir. I would like to make a motion that we approve the proposed district rule amendments changes as presented.
Have a motion and a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Before we take a vote, Alan, have you received any written notices to contest a permit that have been timely?
Yes, I have.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 11, Discussion and possible action on the following pending aggregated transport permit applications for groundwater from the Simsboro Aquifer. BVTP 002 for RH2O LLC. BVTP 003 for Clifford A. Skiles III. BVTP 004 for James C. Bryan. BVTP 005 for L. East Moore LLC. BVTP 006 for Fazino Investments LP. BVDP 007 for Eli Family Partnership LP. And BVTP 008 for Cula de Brazos LLC, all of whom are co-applicants with UW Brazos Valley Farm LLC. I make a motion to approve the ILA with SOA and direct the general manager to set a hearing for the October meeting to determine party status.
Preliminary hearing. Yeah. Or that will be determined, yeah.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12, general manager's report.
Okay. Start off with the drought report. Things are starting to get droughty. We're starting to move in. We've already moved into from a white zone to a yellow zone just in the last 2 weeks. So, predictions of La Nina and a drier fall are there. So we'll just see how that goes. You can see that the long-term BDSI is showing the same issues in our area. And the long-term seasonal is showing it to be neutral. So we'll just see how that goes. Moving on, I won't go over this, but this is your updated. You have it in your packet of all permits and amounts, MAG, actual use from 2009 to 2023, and for each of the aquifers and all permitted wells. There was one well in August that was a GM permitted well, 40 acre feet in J. Jackson for Bio XRG, which is down along Shiloh Road by the Sanderson farm processing plant of 40 acre feet. Here is the write-up and the worksheet on that. 30 gallons per minute well. 40 acre feet is maximum, and the footprint fit on their property line, within their property. And so the permit was issued. On the mitigation management depletion zone, we have most of August has been spent with getting our monitoring well, our normal monitoring well list, started working on getting a late summer, early fall readings. So we have kind of backed off for right now until we get through all the monitoring wells, and we'll go back to continue to identify Simsboro wells that need to be on the mitigation list. And that's just, you've seen those before. Moving on to our DFC planning. At the last meeting, I told you that we'd be having a meeting in September the 20th, GMA 12, that we needed to be consistent with what we've done in the past as far as the information we've been providing in the well files. As we go through that DFC planning process. So we've asked Jay, I told you that I'd like to get James to do a GAM run and show exactly, do our best estimate of what those well files should contain, and for that to be presented to GMA 12 for their consideration. So I'm going to let James have it right here, James. It's supposed to be, do I have it? Oh, I had it. Hang on, James. Maybe it's, yeah, get out of the background. Give me just a second. I thought we had put it in line, but apparently we hadn't, James. Got a lot of things going on.
You want me to describe it off the hard copy?
Sure. Y'all do have this in your packet, all of the slides that, right here. This is it right here. Up in front.
So again, Alan's name for this is the best estimate, and he gave you some of the history there, but GMA 12 historically has asked the districts to provide their best estimate of pumping moving forward. The assumptions for this run are that the base run was S19 G3, recalling that S19 was the pumping file that the GMA 12 ended up with at the last round of planning that folded into, the mags that you now have and the drawdowns that you have now. G3 indicates 3 different iterations of growth assessments that were done by Alan and consultants. And I think you guys have seen some of those in the past potentially. But that includes a lot of the demand increase that is folded into the 2022 state water plan for Brazos and Robertson County. And the next big shift was inclusion of the Upwell Georgetown ramp up based on the Georgetown letter dated June 17th, 2024. And that includes a ramp up to 50,000 acre feet per year maximum. We didn't include any type of curtailments in this run. We just ran all that straight forward. You can see the graph of that on page 3. And going back to the black line there, that's S19. That's what was in the current DFC and what ended up being the MAG from the last round of planning. After shifting some of the water, the pumpage, that was included in S19 associated with irrigation and a ramp up that was included for some of the anticipated pumping for Upwell that was included in S19. S19 G3, even with the growth, ends up being a little bit less than that. And then when you include the Upwell pumping at full ramp up, then you see the blue line that's indicated there. And that's what we call S19 G3 plus UG 50K. And if we go to the next DFC drawdown timeline, then you can see the results of those 3 average drawdowns through time. The black line being the DFC run that ends up close to the Simsboro DFC of 262 and 2070. And then with the growth run, you see that one ends up a little bit lower and crosses at 2068. And the S19 G3 plus 50K ends up at 329, crossing about 2050. So those are the results. And again, the context of this was to allow a discussion at GMA 12 of what Alan thinks is the best estimate for pumping based on all of his input into that process. And then if we go to the next page, you can see the comparison to the current DFCs for Brazos Valley, best estimate scenario. And we've shown the approved DFCs above for each one of the groundwater districts. And you can see Brazos Valley highlighted there in orange. And then again, highlighted in orange with the best estimate pumping. So you can take sort of the difference between those two. For Simsboro, for example, you're going from 262 to 329. And the changes in the Calvert Bluff Hooper are also impacted by that pumping according to the model as well. So we didn't show the curves for those. What we showed you the curves for in the previous graph was just the Simsboro. Any questions?
What we haven't done at this point, I don't think, but it might be a good exercise. You know, we've been asking each of, especially Lost Pines and Post Oak Savannah, to update, do something similar to this. Give us your best estimates of what it is that you expect to be happening over this window. Things that are already there, that you already have, any new projects that you have coming online that you believe that are going to come to fruition, that type of thing. I'll ask you, James, see if you know, is all of Vista, the Vista Ridge, I believe, is all in there, but is it in there at how they actually ramped it up? Do you know? Or is it ramped up at a slower rate? Do you have any idea?
Great question. I'm looking at our notes on that. We did shift some of the pumping in G3, as you recall, from the Carrizo to the Wilcox for
Yes.
Vista Ridge. I don't recall if there was a change in the ramp up or what that ramp up is.
Okay.
So I can get that answer for you.
What I want to do, what the reason I'm leading to that is if things are already happening, and I'd like feedback from the board, if things are already happening and we have let's say we had a ramp up and Vista Ridge has started in 2021, is that when they turned it on, or 2020?
2020.
You know, Andy?
2020.
2020, April of 2020, and I think it went full bore, from what I understand. So I'd be really interested to see if that's what is NS19.
Our notes indicate on the final page that the 9100 in the Carrizo starts in 2024 and 41,000 in the Simsboro starts in 2024. And
Okay.
I'll confirm that is from that point forward.
But that's a reasonable time.
Yeah.
That's good. I think we need to get our handle on, I'm gonna ask James and I'm gonna ask Chris to go through and go, we know there are projects, we know there are gonna be projects coming online and get, so that we can get a handle on what's out there and what's reasonable and what may and may not be. So that's why I ask these questions.
So amongst the GMA members, is everybody providing all of the current pumping and future pumping? Do we have an agreement that we're all providing the same type of numbers to do the future modeling?
That has not been talked about at this point, like you just
I
described.
just think like a good starting point before we start the process on
Yeah.
how we're actually going to provide numbers, whether it's existing, proposed,
Yeah.
future predicted numbers.
I agree. I'll bring that up at this next meeting and we may have already talked around the edges of that, but we'll have a good conversation about that. I think that's a great idea. Anybody have any questions, thoughts?
Any questions from the board?
Go on, let me get to his. Let's get back to our other slideshow. Too many slideshows. I will not go over our general business, but it's been a very, very, very busy August. We did attend, had 4 board members to attend the Groundwater Summit, 19th through 22nd. I felt it was highly informative. I thought it was one of the best ones we've ever had. Before and after that, we've been measuring wells and have been, believe me, we've been running around here like one-armed paper hangers at time. So there's our public meetings for the month. And general business stays just about the same month in, month out. We do have the meeting on September the 20th. We've got a GMA 12. We've got a Roberts County Field Day on the 24th out here at the Roberts County Fairgrounds. That'll be about 235 or 40 kids, I suppose, all the schools in Robertson County. The Brazos County Water Field Day is on the 8th. We've had one venue change. We're going from the park. What's that park?
We're going from Central Park to the Hildebrand Equine Center at A&M.
So we're looking forward to that. And I've been working with the CWCA Legislative Subcommittee and on waste and permitting and reservoir exemptions. And there's been a lot of work done there. So anyway, that's pretty much those activities and an updated BVGCD management plan. Just keep it moving forward so that we don't miss anything. I will say this, last year, one of the things that we changed, that we added, because TWDB said subsidence is very important. And you've got to pay attention to subsidence. You've got to give it more than a lick and a promise. And we determined that we were going to go to points that we could go back to year after year and take readings. Okay, so with James's help, we've gone out and we've identified 4 spots that are national geodetic spots that have been measured. There are known measurements there. Things don't move. It basically is used, marked for surveying purposes. There are known spots, known levels. And so we've got 2 down in Brazos County, 2 here in Robertson County. The way our management plan states it is that we need to be, when we get to an area that has lost 100 feet of artesian head, that's when you actually would start measuring those areas. So we've found those down in and around the Brazos the Brazos Robertson County line, but down in the well field for Bryan College Station, A&M, where that's going to happen. And then we've got 2 that are out here just outside of Hearn, because this is likely an area that same is going to happen. So we're going to go ahead and start taking those measurements annually. Going to try to take them and start now before we ever get to that point. So we've got a good baseline. Anyway, just giving you that little bit of that background. So, don't know if anybody else other than the subsidence district is in Houston is doing anything at this level, but I think it's a good exercise. That would be all that I have for the manager's report, other than we are going to meet with Mark and with Jason and with Jeff, the building committee. There's some work that we need to do to this wall on the other side of that wall. It appears we had some damage last April of 2023 when we had some damage when the roof collapsed. We could not see it until now. Things have been cleaned and there it is. I've contacted TML. They're looking to just reopen the old claim, come in and see is this part of that damage, that kind of thing. But I'm going to be contacting a brick mason. There's some work we've got to do that wall. We don't want that wall we need the wall to survive. We need to repair it. We need to water seal it in some way so that we still have a good structure. So working on that now. We'll likely put up some type of a cyclone fence or something around part of the lot to keep people from getting back in that area, and then all of a sudden we got a wall on them. Okay, that's the main thing, is we just don't need anybody with a wall falling on top of them. So that's all I got. Questions?
Questions for Alan? Item number 13, discussion and possible future agenda items.
I have some.
You have some.
I'll just give you the heads up on it.
Heads up.
We go. We will have the audit, 2023 audit next month. We will need to do a budget adjustment on the 2023 operating budget. We will be meeting with the budget committee between now and the next meeting to start working on the initial budget. So plans are to at least show y'all the initial budget, or at least what the budget committee would like to show you on that. We're gonna have to have, and the budget committee is gonna have a serious discussion on fee schedules and how we're gonna go about that. That's gonna take some time. So I think at the end of the day, that's probably a discussion that we need to see how much is gonna be on the next agenda, but we need to have a lengthy discussion about how we're going to move forward with our fee schedule. So, those are all things that I see coming.
Anything else for the board to add? Hearing none. Item number 14, during the meeting.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
I think it's been a lot. I think it's.
Are you happy?
I'm gonna find out. Just.
You what? You're gonna find out.
You'll hear more about this.
Yeah.